Hello, my name is Reverend Dr. May Elise Cannon. Today is Wednesday, October 2nd. It's only a few days before the year anniversary of October 7th. Today's October 2nd. Today is day 362 since the attacks by Hamas on the south of Israel. Lots of updates tonight. I am now in Amman, Jordan, and it was tough to get here. Flights across the Middle East were canceled because of the Iranian attack last night. In retaliation for Israel's assassination in Tehran, then the assassination of the Hezbollah General Secretary Nasrallah. It's late at night, kind of in the middle of the night. But this is the update for Wednesday, October 2nd, day 362. So let me give you an update on the Iranian strikes. So Iran launched 180 roughly ballistic missiles at Israel on Tuesday night. It's considered an unprecedented attack because of the ballistic missiles. If you recall the attack earlier in the spring, those were slow missiles. They took hours. We heard the attack was going to come. I got a Washington Post alert. It said there was going to be an imminent attack within 12 hours. Within a couple of hours, it happened. As soon as we heard the attack happened, it almost seemed like the missiles landed. This was unprecedented in size and range. It was claiming to be a response to, quote, the aggression of the Zionist regime. A diplomatic source said Israel was considering exacting, quote, a heavy price from Iran because of this, which would likely come in the form of an attack on strategic infrastructure, such as an oil or gas facility. Israel is demanding that the international community deepen Iran's isolation. So they're calling for sanctions severe enough to disrupt daily life in Iran. That's what Israel would like. Israel's also urging countries to declare the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps a terrorist organization. The Israeli Defense Forces said several Air Force bases were damaged by the attack, but there were no weapons, soldiers, or aircraft hit. They said damage to infrastructure and property in civilian areas was, quote, only minor and likely caused by shrapnel from interception missiles. What that means is the Iron Dome, the other interception missiles, they meet the ballistic missiles in the sky, and the remnants left behind, that actually can cause injury, death, and damage. That's what they're talking about. So there was a death. The death was actually a person from the Gaza Strip, a Palestinian, Sama Asli. He was 37 years old. He was killed near Jericho. I read reports that he was killed by a part of the Iron Dome, but Haaretz reported today he was killed by an Iranian missile. So I don't know for sure. Those are two different reports I've read. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu stated Iran, quote, made a big mistake. They'll pay for it. So Haaretz also said it was 180 missiles. Israel's military confirmed that 3 military bases were targeted. Also, the Mossad headquarters, which is located in Tel Aviv, was targeted. The IDF said most of the missiles were intercepted. The damage was minimal. And again, a Palestinian from Gaza was killed in the West Bank. Israeli officials told Axios that Israel would launch significant retaliation. So the big question is this kind of like April, May? Iran had to have a counterattack. You had major attacks on Lebanon and Hezbollah. You had the Secretary General Nasrallah killed. Iran's losing face. Israel, honestly, a lot of Israelis are saying, whoa, this is unprecedented. The major political leader of Hamas was assassinated. You've had major Hamas leaders, Hezbollah leaders killed. I mean, these are major military accomplishments, even though they're in violation of international law, which they are. And so you have many Israelis saying, oh, well, this is a success. And so Iran is losing face. And so the question is, was this an attack like April, May, which in large part, many people would say Iran had to counterattack. And just like April, May, part of what happened is Iran let both the US and Russia know 12 hours before it was going to happen. They said, hey, we're going to attack. So Israel had time to prepare, as you heard. Now, I'm not saying this is not a huge deal. It's a huge deal. But I'm trying to contextualize the conversation. And the question is this like the spring or is this a different deal? So Israel's saying they're going to significantly retaliate. Tehran is saying if Israel responds with force, it will attack again. I keep saying this is like the Cuban Missile Crisis. Who's going to back down? Is it going to keep ratcheting up, or is someone going to step off the cliff, or are we going to go into World War III? I mean, I feel like I've been saying this for months. I'm sorry. I'm tired of hearing myself talk. I know my updates are way too long and I'm talking too long tonight. There's so much happening right now. Iran's supreme leader today blamed tension and wars. Listen to this. not on Israel, but on the US and European countries. Why? Because the weapons that are being used are being supplied by the United States and a few European countries, telling them to get lost from the regions so that countries here can live in peace, BBC reported. President Biden said yesterday the US military actively supported Israel's defense against Iran's military attack. Biden said the attack appears to have been defeated and ineffective, and that consequences to Iran, quote, remain to be seen. Biden said he had not spoken to Netanyahu yet. He plans to do so. Listen to this quote. Make no mistake, the US is fully supportive of Israel. I want everybody to live in peace and security. The US is allowing Israel to act with impunity and to violate international humanitarian law. And so we are literally going to bed with people who are breaking, like with a government that's breaking the law. It's in the best interest of Israel. I want Israel to be safe and secure. I want Jewish people to live in safety and security. And I just want you to know, even if this massive attack against Hezbollah is successful, there will be generations of hatred and generations of terrorists formed. And I really want to be wrong, but I just keep thinking of Jesus's words in the Garden of Gethsemane. Violence begets violence. Those who live by the sword die by the sword. So Biden says, make no mistake, the U.S. is fully supportive of Israel. And National Security Advisor Sullivan told reporters that U.S. naval destroyers have joined Israel in shooting down missiles after meticulous joint planning in anticipation of the attack. The reason they could anticipate the attack is because Iran told them. Let's just be clear. Okay. Tehran's going to face severe consequences, the White House said. They called the attack ineffective, but this was a significant escalation nonetheless. The Pentagon said U.S. Navy destroyers fired approximately a dozen interceptors during the attack, adding that Israel intercepted the majority of the missiles, which I'm grateful for. I'm so grateful that there was, heaven forbid that there was any death, but I'm so grateful that there was not more death. U.S. bases in Iraq and the region will be targets if Washington joins in any response to Iranian strikes on Israel, or if Israel uses Iraqi airspace against Tehran. So now Iraqi armed groups have said, and Reuters is reporting on this, that if the U.S. gets involved, that U.S. forces in Iraq are going to be targeted. So we've been saying all along, this is already a broader Middle East war. You know, when I was in the region in January, we couldn't go to Iraq. We were supposed to go to Erbil. We were supposed to go to Baghdad. Erbil was bombed the day before we were supposed to fly in. This is already a broader Middle East war. And so Iraq is saying, hey, US, you know, your own assets in the region are at risk. The UK armed forces were involved in yesterday's operation. They also shot down missiles. Their defense secretary confirmed, according to Politico. The French president said France is committed to Israel's protection. They've mobilized military sources in the Middle East to counter Iranian's threat. The UK Prime Minister Starmer said that the UK stands with Israel and recognizes its right to self-defense. Iran must stop these attacks. Israel's Foreign Minister Katz declared Guterres persona non grata and said that he's banned from the country. So the General Secretary of the United Nations cannot go to Israel. Anyone who cannot unequivocally condemn Iran's heinous attack on Israel does not deserve to step foot on Israeli soil. This is an anti-Israel Secretary General who lends support to terrorists, rapists, and murderers. Okay, so that happened today. All flights to Iran are canceled until Thursday. So the country's civil aviation organization, that was announced on Wednesday today, and flights all over the Middle East were canceled. I mentioned that. I was supposed to be on an Egypt Air flight that was canceled from Cairo to Amman. I was one of the last people on an evening flight tonight that flew into Jordan. But the airport in Jordan was busy, and people generally, when I talked to them, shrugged their shoulders and said, you know, the airport was the busiest I've seen it. I was here for a few weeks in May. I was here in January. And the sentiment seemed to be that the rocket attacks last night, now I'm in Jordan, and I think that they were a big deal. I just want to tell you the things that I've heard and the things I've observed. One person I was talking to, who I've gotten to know over past visits, said, you know us, the ordinances explode and then we go out and we hang out and we have a barbecue around the shrapnel. And then another person I know, a Palestinian who has relatives, you know, in the Bethlehem area, showed me a picture, and his sister and friends in the occupied territories were literally hanging around a huge exploded piece of what looked like a missile. And something just seems so wrong when war and militarization is so normalized. And I am praying and just desperate. My God, make it stop. Make the violence stop and help us contribute to it for the sake of Israel for the sake of Palestinians. The IDF announced that one of their captains, Eitan Oster, 22, was killed in combat in Lebanon. And later on Wednesday, 7 soldiers were killed in combat in Lebanon. The IDF called on residents in additional towns in South Lebanon to evacuate north of the Awali River, dozens of kilometers away from the Israeli-Lebanese border. Some of the towns on the outskirts of the city of Tyre, more than 20 kilometers north of the border. The IDF said that the 36th Armored Division, which includes the Golani Brigade, the 188th Armored Brigade, the Etzioni Brigade, had joined the ground incursion in South Lebanon. Some 100 rockets were fired from Lebanon at northern Israel today, according to local councils and the IDF. 10 houses were damaged in the northern town of Metula following the rocket barrage. Its local council said it's difficult this morning and it follows a really tough night. Israel is sending additional forces to its ground operation in Lebanon, and it has told more villages to evacuate. They're stepping up pressure on Hezbollah, and the group claimed it repelled an Israeli ground attack in Lebanon today, and it continued firing rockets at Israel. As someone who listens regularly to these updates, someone who listens to my updates wanted me to just specify that Israel's ground invasion, what that means, that it looks somewhat, or has at least in past days, looked similar to what was happening in Gaza, of not a complete or concrete infiltration full on into Lebanon, but a limited exploration of terrain in preparation for an imminent invasion. And thus far has been along the border to southern Lebanon and northern Israel. But you've heard that that's going further into Lebanese territory. Israel's recent airstrikes in Lebanon destroyed about half of Hezbollah's arsenal. It had accumulated over more than 3 decades, according to senior Israeli and U.S. officials, the New York Times reported. And Israel said it has been secretly conducting raids into Lebanon for the past 11 months as a part of an effort to destroy Hezbollah infrastructure ahead of broader ground operations that began on Monday night. Officials said the military conducted at least 70 cross-border raids. So this is that kind of going in and coming out, 70 cross-border raids since November, and they found tunnels along the border allegedly filled with weapons. Egypt's cabinet condemned what it called a dangerous Israeli escalation in South Lebanon and rejected attempts to impose a new situation on the ground that violates Lebanese sovereignty, they said in a statement. And then I want to just talk for a minute about Gaza. This is a report from the Israeli Defense Forces who said that the Air Force attacked Hamas members that were hiding at a school in central Gaza. Whenever we hear that, it means the school was attacked. So on Wednesday, today, fighter jets attacked militants that were operating at a former school in Nusrat in central Gaza. And the reports that we heard from medics in Gaza said that Israeli strikes killed at least 60 people in Gaza last night. 60 Palestinians were killed, including at a school that was sheltering displaced families. We hear displaced families from Gaza, and we hear militants from the IDF. Someone said to me when I arrived in Amman today, the news about things escalating in Lebanon is that Gaza has died down. And I just want you to hear me say 60 people at least died in Gaza last night. It is still a battle zone. Please do not ignore Gaza. There are still hostages held there. There are still people dying there every day. The death toll is at least 41,689 people. Gilad Gorngold, whose son Tal Shosham is held as a hostage, told Haaretz that social solidarity in Israel has crumbled and the responsibility to share in the pain of other families. Going out once a week and not enough people at that, folding up and leaving, it's not enough. Solidarity is breaking down. And in terms of just a couple other things, I'm sorry, I know this is so long. 7 people were killed and 16 injured. I wanted to just talk for a minute about that attack that happened yesterday. It was a shooting attack in Tel Aviv, in Jaffa. It was a combined stabbing attack as well. Police and emergency services in Israel said no group claimed responsibilities, but Palestinian residents of the West Bank, we believe Hebron, were identified as the shooters, according to the Washington Post and the New York Times. And the Yemen's Houthis targeted military posts deep within inside Israel with rockets, according to a spokesperson today. Saying that if the U.S. and the West continue to support Israel, their interests, U.S. and Western interests, will be put under fire. Finally, Independent Catholic News reported today that Father Gregorius Salum, a Greek Orthodox parish priest, was among several Christians killed in an Israeli airstrike yesterday in South Lebanon. He was the Orthodox parish priest in Ibl al-Saki, South Lebanon. Reports initially indicated that Father Salum had been seriously injured along with his wife and children in a rocket attack near their home, but it was later reported that Father Gregorius had died of his injuries. There have been a number of Christian casualties in South Lebanon. I was with the Middle East Council of Churches in January and met one of the priests who has a parish in that community, and the whole community then was displaced among the tens of thousands of Lebanese who have been displaced since October, for months and months on the Lebanese border. The Christian majority village of Ain el Deb near Sidon was hit by Israeli planes, 32 deaths confirmed, including a Christian woman, dozens injured. Middle East news sources indicate that the Israeli military was seeking to kill a Hezbollah fighter. So that's the update from the Middle East. I'm sorry it is so long. It is in the midst of horrific news, but we will not give up hope. Despair is the luxury of the privileged. This means our work has never been more important. Pray, pray, pray. Pray for breakthroughs. Pray for courageous leadership that will de-escalate instead of increasingly seeking militarization and violence. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem, the peace of Palestine, the peace of Israel, the peace of all of the Middle East. In the name of Christ, amen.